Hey, Peter.
Hey.
Where are your kids?
I don't know.
I'm Adam Maness.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Daily jazz advice and occasional parenting advice? What? Really?
What?
Coming at you.
Yeah, I don't really know much about that, but we're going to talk about it today because we got a speak pipe from Alex in the Pacific Northwest.
We're going to have to be careful, though.
Yeah, we're going to need to
You know why? Because we're always talking about, we give out, we say this is daily jazz advice. And we always say, okay, if we give out bad jazz advice, what's the worst thing that can happen? Are they going to sue us for a bad I guess they could.
But if we give out bad parenting advice,
a poor little child could get hurt. And we love the children's.
I'm going to mix in, too. We had a similar question via email from a guy named Jack. So we're going to do kind of like, this will be the same kind of topic.
Are people asking us about raising kids? Are they messing with us?
A little bit.
Like these are the last guys out, or are they actually? I don't know which one's scarier.
I don't know either. Hey, so but before we do, that was fun yesterday with the jazz memes.
Oh
guys.
Yeah, they should ask those guys about raising kids. They're kids, I think. Actually, no, that was great. Yeah. Big shout out to Chase and Kevin. That was a lot of fun.
Dope.
And much success.
All right, let's listen to the speak pipe from Alex, and then we're going to read this email, and then we can get into it.
Okay.
Hey, Peter. Hey, Adam. Mr. Spaceman again. So I promised I would ask a out-of-the-box question on the comments. So here it goes. Over the past 8 months, I've realized that there's something that's much harder than playing giant steps at tempo, and that is parenting. So I was wondering if you guys could lend some advice or even just talk about how musicians raise kids. I'm not talking about forcing music on your children. I'm talking about how your creativity, how your inclination to improvisation and all that, how does that relate to your style of parenting? If Adam and Peter wrote a how-to book on parenting, the jazz edition, what would that look like? Love you guys. Really curious to see what you do with this one. Take care. Bye.
That's a scary proposition of a book right there.
I love that. Adam and Peter's parenting book, the jazz edition. What would that look like? Blockbuster or lawsuit? It's somewhere.
12 pages. No, and I just want to say, for any of our listeners who don't have children, don't turn off your podcast app, because we're going to give you some really practical advice here about things like time management and creativity that I think we've learned probably as being dads.
Well, actually, part of that advice is to turn off their podcasting. We're going to say turn off your phone.
Pay attention to your kids, damn it.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this now and your kids are like not in a car seat, but they're under the age of, I don't even know, how big do they have to be? Put them in a car seat. That's the first piece of advice, okay? I guess that's not jazz advice, though.
Well, we also got this we got this message on Facebook from Jack, and this was from quite a while ago. I think this was right around the time that we had our lovely wives guest on the podcast, and Jack writes,
this question should go to them, really.
I'm excited to hear some dirt flying around on the upcoming episode with your wife. Okay, so this is from a few months ago. So I thought I'd throw some gasoline on the fire. You could, of course, cover these some other time, which we did, Jack, but it'd be interesting to hear everyone's take on the following. How do you guys juggle kids with one parent who's a musician? How do you handle gigs and practicing rehearsals? This has been especially difficult for me with the toddler. Does it get easier? What's your take on getting your kids interested in jazz? It's fun and cultural, but it's not exactly a financially stable career, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. And I think that's where we can start with these two questions, kind of two-pronged approach here.
Yeah.
And to kind of dive into Alex's question about what is the book?
Yeah. What does the book look like?
Peter and
Alex Spaceman. Yeah, well, so maybe we could kind of, I want to talk just about what being a jazz musician, in retrospect, I realize now helps me, I think, in being a parent. Hopefully a good parent. You'd have to ask my kids about that. But none are in prison, so let's start there. No, but I think improvisation, the ability to improvise, and then this is kind of a corny thing, but I really think that it's true. what a great skill to have in parenting. Any parent knows that you have to constantly be improvising because kids are unpredictable, kind of like the chord changes. You think you know them, and then they change up on you.
That's right.
So I think sometimes, like, that's why I always took a little bit with a grain of salt, like all these parenting books. And, thankfully, in a way, I think, hopefully I'm still active parenting, but the idea of, like, everybody goes online to, like, look for a Yelp review on how to do something for their kids now. I think it's almost like too much information. When my kids were really young, it was like these books it was the same thing though. It was like information telling you how to do things as opposed to using your own intuition. And I think what jazz really taught me is, like, you have to express yourself. You have to be a person, and the humanity that we all are, the story that we tell, is not separate when you go on the bandstand and you come off. And so when you're dealing with children and a spouse and family and loved ones and all these different things, it's okay to be yourself. Like we were talking about just the other day, it's like you have to, jazz teaches you to get to know yourself for sure.
Yep.
It can give you confidence. It gave me confidence. It gave you confidence to discard when people say, oh, you should do this with your kid. You should do that. It's like, no, I know what to do. I'm going to do whatever pops in my head. And I'm just like a good improviser kind of plays whatever pops in their head in a way. That's the first big part I would say is improvisation.
Absolutely. And, if we're jumping on things that we usually talk about with jazz and improvisation, number one is always listen. And I feel like that's a skill that I've really took to.
I never listened to my kids, but that would have been good. I wish I'd known that at the time. Jeez.
To dadding is really to listen to where they're going, like really paying attention to what they're into and how they're feeling about things. And back to Jack's question on the Facebook thing about the idea of getting your kids into jazz or whatever. It's like it's almost impossible to force on anybody.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of have it around and let their musical taste develop, and hopefully someday they'll appreciate what you do. But I don't think it's anything you can force. I think it's just have to.
I don't think you need to. I mean, it's such a hard thing to become. It's not that jazz is so hard, but it's just such a competitive thing, and it's a kind of refined skill that I almost feel like you have to be. Oh, I hate to say you have to be chosen. I always said I wouldn't say that. But I mean, no, it's like jazz chooses people in a way that not a parent thinks they would, in terms of like, oh, I love baseball, so I'm going to train little Johnny from a young age and get him the best instruction and have him work out and learn all these things. It's like, yeah, maybe, but the game still has to choose him, and he has to choose the game. It's really not about you as a parent, you can, I agree with this thing of like, we always have music in the house and stuff. And I don't think any of my kids are going to become jazz musicians. And I'm fine with that. They all appreciate the music and hear it. They like other stuff too. And I think at some point it already kind of happened with my daughter, because she was always like, I've heard enough jazz. Now I'm going off to college. Ooh, if I can get away with it. And then, some of her friends, little hipster friends, are like, oh, we're going to see some jazz. You know much about it? And she's like, I kind of know everything about it because I grew up around it.
Yeah.
And then she was like, different people playing up in Boston. Dad, can you get me tickets for it? I was like, yes, I can.
It's all coming around now.
Yeah. So, I think, you have it in the environment. But to me, that's not even like a big part of raising kids. To me, it's like everything. What jazz does, if you're a jazz musician, you understand the importance of culture.
For sure.
Like, there's no way around that. And so I think that is such a blessing and such a great thing that I got from jazz, was that I understood like how important the arts are in education. Like, a lot of people talk about that, but they don't really know it, and they don't really follow through on it. Like, for us and my family, and I had the benefit of having parents that were musicians and aunts and uncles, a lot of musicians in my family. So it was like a thing. Right. It wasn't like some of these families were like, stay away from that. That's a bad career.
Right. You're going to be a lawyer and that's it.
Yeah. And so like that is a benefit whether you become a musician or not. It's almost a bigger benefit if you don't, like an appreciation of literature and plays and visual arts and ballet. Not only appreciation, but a respect for that. Yeah. It's easy to say respect lawyers and police officers, and that's all important too. But our society is already teaching people to do that.
Yeah.
Just like you said, lawyer or doctor. A doctor. Who's just like, so you're gonna be a jazz or a classical? You can be a hip hop or a jazz artist. No one said no parent ever.
I think that's great, man. And all right, let's switch gears back to sort of like the
actual question,
the nuts and bolts of the question about to Jack's point of like, does it get better? I have a toddler, and to Alex's point,
yeah,
of
they
like,
stop crapping in their pants and they have big boy pants on.
They do.
That's one
they
part
do
that
get
gets better.
I think for us, man, we should just throw a shout out here to our partners who are really
Open Studio, our business partner. Oh, sorry, who are we talking about?
I did
Andrew,
not. That was
our
not
producer.
Me. No,
Dan
this
Martin,
is not. I do not endorse
who
this.
Who are we talking about?
Our wives, man.
Oh, the parenting partner,
Kelly and Heather. Yeah, who have really shouldered.
Yeah, they've shouldered a lot, and they can talk about this some because they're going to be back. I think. Well, let's go ahead and put it out there. I want them back on the podcast because they were such a hit last time. Our numbers went up.
They were good.
Our class went up.
They were good.
But yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's been like I couldn't do it without Heather's support at all.
No, literally. Me neither.
Would be impossible. So.
Me neither. I mean, literally, our kids would probably be dead or diseased if we didn't have it. And that's an important thing. I think that's not necessarily particular to jazz musicians. It's particular to people that are very passionate about and doing something that they love that requires a lot of work or time away from home at odd hours, all these kind of things. It's kind of, with jazz or any kind of, my father was he is a classical musician, and he played in a symphony here for many years, and kids' perceptions of what that is so off. Like, he used to go to work at night, I guess, a lot, because we'd be out playing in the vacant lot across the street. And I remember
he's leaving in his tux to go.
Yeah. And I remember this other kid one time was like, "Who's that? That's your dad?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Is he like a night watchman or something?" Because he had like black clothes on and he's leaving at night.
Kind of.
Yeah, violas, same thing.
Yeah.
I think that having a spouse, that's always important, that understands these things. And then, when you're raising kids and you're in sync and everything, I think then everything is just happening.
I think one thing that I learned early on, and I think this could be helpful if you're struggling at all with finding time to practice or, just finding the energy or whatever, is when I had kids, it was an opportunity for me to really get a little more organized. In my practice routine, in my schedule. Like, I really made an effort to be more consistent with my sleep.
Your Bujo appeared suddenly.
The
bullet
journal came out because it was time to, like, really, what you want to be able to do is to track your progress, or to keep track of your thoughts, because you will lose them by the end of the day. Whereas before, I would sit around and think about my thoughts all day.
Yeah. Could you imagine? My own funny thing is, like, people without kids, when they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so busy." I'm like, no, you can't. All you got is yourself. All you have is yourself to worry about.
You can manage that.
Yeah. But I agree. Like, and I remember that it was so funny. Like, kids are so disorganized by their nature. That's the beauty of them. Yeah. But they make you organized. It's so funny, how that works. Like, that's just a survival thing. And I was just thinking too, about, I love this idea of like what jazz helped us to be parents, because so many people would be like, "Oh, jazz taught you how to introduce drugs to your kids," or something negative, that's in the media or whatever. And not really anymore. But this idea of like, there's something built in with jazz that you're going against the grain.
Yeah.
Because you have to kind of fight for it at different times, and that's the history of the music. Like the people that we lionize, Charlie Parker, Billie Holiday, Mary Lou Williams, Louis Armstrong, all these great names whose music is so great. They were actually cultural pioneers in going against the grain of what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to, many times just shut up and be a woman and stay away from the instrument. Like, they were true trailblazers. So we don't have to do that because they did that in a way. But I think that there's that tradition of that in jazz that's carried on, and it's a cultural thing. And so that's such a great gift that I think that we sort of naturally give our kids, and you should let that all out in terms of, like, we're involved in something that we're not important, but the music is important. And a lot of times parents are like, "Oh, just coming back from work, give me a drink. I hate my boss. I'm gonna shoot up everybody tomorrow when I go." I don't know why I'm using this accent, but I mean, it could be any. Yeah. Sorry, I went a little dark. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not happy in your work environment.
Yeah.
Jazz musicians may be unhappy that they don't have enough work environments.
Right. But no one's
underemployed.
No one's in the game for the wrong reasons, because it's just not worth it to do it unless you really, really love it. A jazz musician really loves what they do.
Exactly. And I never brought all my kids like, you have to be a musician or whatever, but I was always like, you have to, not even you have to, but do something that you love, do something that you're passionate about. I mean, it's the whole cliche, do something you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. That's not true. But you'll be working, but you'll be so happy. It's happy work. It's enjoyable. It's something that you'd be doing anyway.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Jack. Sorry for the delay.
Spaceman.
getting back to you, but hope this helped. It's like
Alex Spaceman.
Alex Spaceman.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's his nickname.
That's his nickname. Well, he coined it. It's not like we called him that. He's getting way more coherent lately. I hope that's not because we made fun of him.
Well, he said he's not actually, in Colorado.
Speaking of, right. He's not located. He's located in the Pacific Northwest.
That's similar.
Yeah, similar. Yeah. But actually, I feel, thank you guys for the question. I actually feel like a little better parent just talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of amped up to parent my kids.
Yeah, finally.
You want to go to happy hour?
Yeah, let's do it. Whoa.
Never mind. I'm fine.
See, we keep it raw here. We're not editing that out. We got equipment falling down. Oh, let's talk about tomorrow. Oh, that's the Open Studio music. We are sponsored by Open Studio, and tomorrow is Hump Day. A little Hump Day bass line. So tune in tomorrow because we have a very special offer. We don't even know what it is. We're going to come up with it between today and tomorrow. But we're going to do a little, what are we calling this? Peter's Hump Day special. We're going to try to do this every Wednesday to get me to remember when Hump Day is. So tune in tomorrow. Just for all you'll hear it, listeners, a nice little special for Open Studio. And until then,
you'll hear it.